sort of amusing the AC/DC singer. He says, "Lady kill." He says, "Kill, lady kill. I got my gun." No, he says, "Too many women with too many pills." That was he switches from metaphor to sarcastic. Too many women with pills, and I'm gonna you. It's funny, but it's a funny song though. Anyway, um, AC/DC. Well, some of their songs are irritating. I find them too much with the aligned with the British messaging, but they have some good songs. I don't think he was that much of a psycho, but he wanted to look sort of like a psycho. I think he wanted to announce his gun after John Lennon thing about having a warm gun, but they didn't want to talk about real specific gun laws like Americans do, and they actually are gun grabbers in the UK. But they do, like John Lennon wanted to surprise all the hippies with happiness is a warm gun. I'm not into um, fetishizing guns, and I'll be accused of that, but it wasn't about that. It was something else. Um, it was trying to accommodate a Chinese fantasy, a Chinese themed fantasy, not their fantasy, a fantasy about Chinese, and a woman's high heel, and and then I never was pleased by the idea. They can make you think, uh, visualize yourself at a young age to flatter you. Look how sexy you must have been at a very young age. But no, I don't like that idea. And they're trying to insert their beast fag ideas and their gun fetishizing ideas. It's Elon Musk and Barack Obama and George Bush, Emperor Charles and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, all trying to make me look really sickening, look like a real sicko. These guys are really vicious and they have a huge team behind them. But my idea was that I didn't want the narrative was about terrorists attacking Chinese people in New York, allegedly on behalf of me, um, after a hypothetical group sex orgy in New York City when I was very young, and I don't believe it that there was uh, anyone that was involving any guns as a sex toy at any point. But um, they were saying you were admiring Chinese masculinity when Chinese men were on parade. You were admiring North Korean soldiers walking like Nazi or Soviets. You were admiring them while they had their guns slung low on their hip, and the Chinese, or they had their bayonets out, and you like that, and you want weapons up your butthole. That's their argument. This is the uh, uh, Musk and Obama and Bush and Trump and a lot of Jewish men. You admire Hitler. You want your butthole. Things like that. You must have been pleased when Gaddafi got knifed. No, I was not. I thought it was horrible. Uh, Obama was trying to terrorize me. And I guess the huge of psychological horror and psychological terror. And I don't think it actually happened. I think that it was fake. But anyway, um, a few words about the six they're saying. Um, what was it? They were terrorizing me with, vicious, violent African American men, um, and that was on purpose for the African Americans trying to distance themselves to make me be repulsed and disgusted by them and fearful of them. And that's what they wanted at first. And then, from a place of extreme alienation, I won the debate. And they didn't expect that. So, anyway, I never, they made me doubt it while I was on a bit of a prescription amphetamine abuse psychosis, where I was abusing the prescription, not what the prescription said to do, limit your usage of the prescription amphetamine to this much. And I was like, well, I need to boost my productivity. I can handle it. But it wasn't actually working out for me because I had no way to unwind. I was using ketamine to unwind, and then I didn't have access to ketamine anymore. Didn't have a vehicle to go drive to town and get some beer after I left New York. So I didn't have it, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So I had no way to unwind, and I was also trying to enhance my productivity with the prescription amphetamine, where I was not following the prescription. So that's my fault for not following the prescription. So anyway, that I depleted my neurotransmitters enough that I started to get that temporary early onset dementia, which occurs with the overuse of amphetamines, or even caffeine for that matter, that deplete your neurotransmitters until you start to have demented thinking. So then I sort of I was like, what is wrong with these African Americans? And then they had that guy said, I just murdered drummer Lee Rigby, and I'm perfectly justified. Look at the blood on my hands. And I was like, what are they doing? They're trying to terrorize. They were trying to terrorize me, with a fake murder in London, and so that got me into a state of like, what is wrong with Africans? What is wrong with African Americans, first of all? And then this guy looks like an African immigrant in London, and then they're going crazy, really aggressive craziness from African Americans, and faking their own deaths and blaming it on me, and all kinds of weird psychological attacks. So what I eventually concluded was, after some time to recover, that they are just like everyone else, except for they are trying to intimidate critics. The African Americans are leading the Africans, and the African Americans are trying to intimidate critics. So I had to start to begin to be proactive about showing that I wasn't so hostile as in my most paranoid state during a temporary dementia, a temporary early onset dementia brought about by the depletion of the neurotransmitters and a siege of psychological terrorism, cyber terrorism, hostage taking tactics, and stuff like this. So anyway, they made me look bad, and they're still doing it. They're still working on that, working on the angle of Paul's a psycho. And I was too sympathetic to the idea of hypothetically Robert Kardashian, if he hypothetically had killed his sister. And then the question is, would Armenia extradite him to the USA because if he said, I'm not taking it anymore, she's giving away my little sisters to these African American men. Well, that's what brought about the immediate appeasement of Robert Kardashian Jr. is that they immediately set him up with a wife as soon as that fake honor killing story emerged from Pakistan. And I got tarnished by that because they were, really putting a siege on me. They really wanted to make me look bad. The African Americans and Barack Obama, he's a really jealous, wicked upstart, is what I would call him. So over the years, I climbed down from my being too paranoid, gradually climbing down over the years until I began to feel that I was, too judgmental of Kim Kardashian, but she was in a siege, but she was also too judgmental of her stepfather. But I have to say that I wouldn't. It was a question of what would Armenians want to extradite him, or would the majority of Armenians be sympathetic to him if hypothetically he had killed his sister? And the only way hypothetically he could escape after hypothetically killing his sister is if he had done it remotely, like the Israeli remote cell phone bomb attack. And so it was a sick narrative that was about he's already in Armenia, to set up the hypothetical. He's already in Armenia, and then the question is, are they going to extradite him? And is there ever a time when that men would say an honor killing had been, would be, or hypothetically would be, had been or would be hypothetically justified if there was too much? But this is the way that the African American men have been using the slavery hoax narrative in the manner that the Jews use the fake genocide narrative, to take away any hope that you might recover your daughter or your wife if the African Americans or Jewish men had acquired your wife or your daughters, that you would never recover her, because it's always a final loss of personnel, and it makes the whites very anxious and very afraid of losing personnel. That after the African Americans get one of your daughters, you'll never get her back, is the idea. Because of the slavery narrative, you owe an infinite amount of appeasement because of the slavery hoax narrative. There was no racial slavery of Africans, and nobody is a Native American. So these narratives put you into an infinite debt. Or 6 million Jews in Europe. There was no genocide of Jewish families. There was no genocide of Jews, period, in Europe. So these narratives are, they create a complete sense of loss of hope and a sense of helplessness. But really, you can get your daughter back, or you can get your wife back. But there's things that are irreversible social changes and personal changes in the social structure that are irreversible, and you say that you would not try to get your wife back, or you would say you would not try to get a daughter back if she joined another society. You would not try to get her back because you have other daughters that you want to retain and not lose your personnel to recruitment from someone else's society. So foreign males recruiting your other daughters, younger. So anyway, that's unfortunately there's too much extremism, and after years I became more. I thought, well, she was really young. Kim Kardashian was really young, and I kind of feel more sympathetic to her than I did. And it doesn't matter if she ever felt any. If she had any feelings hurt by my, what I'm saying is I feel sympathy for her, regardless of whether she has any sympathy for my point of view. I was, really under a siege of the most terrible combinations of uh, defamation combined with physical threats, combined with romantic rejection, combined with rejection from uh, uh, inclusion in the economy, a whole bunch of things all at once, and then um, it continued after I escaped from New York. That continued, and it turned out that Tennessee was a bad place to be for a while. It was bad for me for years in Tennessee, and it got worse. And then finally, I started to regain. I regained the upper hand finally, but then I was so depleted and so much older after that all that siege that they put on me. All those jealous men, they really, Clinton was jealous of me, and Bill Clinton, and then George Bush was jealous of me, and then Barack Obama was jealous of me, and Donald Trump jealous of me, like Emperor Charles in London, who's apparently jealous of me too. And well, so anyway, I try to be transparent about what was going through my mind at the time. Um, and I don't want to lose personnel, and I don't want young Caucasian girls, or after they grow up into teenagers, I don't want Caucasian girls to be acquired. Even if she says, let's say a white woman says she wants an African man, even so, I would say, usually I would want to what's the word? No, I don't want to say repossess, but I would want to reclaim her after she gives birth to a child for him. I would want to reclaim her into the Caucasian society again. And I don't want to give away women, but I want to see Caucasian women have more uh, pregnancies from Chinese, but I don't want to give them away. At least she has to give birth. My idea is that she has to give birth to one Caucasian child. And this is what I said for a Chinese woman who had been acquired by a Caucasian man, is that the Chinese woman has to give birth to at least one Chinese child, or she loses her inclusion in the Chinese society. So if she gave birth to Caucasian, half Chinese children, she should also give birth to one Chinese child as her sort of her anchor baby to keep her inclusion and social relevance in the Chinese society. And I consider Japan an extension of the Chinese society. So that's what I was arguing. And I looked like a fool, I guess, but I was saying that men were having a second wife, and I thought I had never had any, there never had been any children of women who had given birth to children of my genetics. I thought I was completely rejected. And then I said, he's going to have a second wife. It's inevitable he's going to have a second wife, and then his first Chinese wife is going to be isolated and sort of abandoned like an orphan. He's going to have another wife, and the Chinese aren't going to want her back unless she has a Chinese child now. And that was for a former roommate and also for another prominent, I'll just say it, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, and I consider her to be sort of more or less Chinese. So I thought they both have to give birth to a Chinese child before they're too old, because their husband is certainly going to take a second wife who's going to be Caucasian, and then she's going to be like sort of adrift without inclusion in the Asian society. So I said she needs to get a Chinese pregnancy now, because her husband's going to have, he must have already have additional Caucasian children, additional lineages of Caucasian children besides her. Well, and then I said that this other woman should also have a Chinese child to keep her inclusion, because it's really nice to have inclusion in the Chinese society. And if a Chinese woman loses her inclusion in the Chinese society because she never gave birth to a purely Chinese child, that's very sad. And then she gets abandoned. That was my point. She gets abandoned. So I said, even if a woman is acquired by men of a different race, if she's good, and she's good looking enough for she can give birth to one child for the Caucasian, one child for the foreign husband, and then she can give birth to one child for her own race. Then you don't have to have the fear of women being acquired completely, and then they're exclusively acquired by the men of that foreign race. And then after their breeding years are over, they become very isolated, and they feel like they've become stranded without Caucasians. Well, if it's a white woman in Africa, say, for example, and she has become stranded after her children have grown up and she has become past her breeding years, and then her husband takes another wife, and she's got nobody around her who's Caucasian, that would be the woman who got stranded. And that's not what we should hope for if she's going to go give birth to an African man's child, or she's good enough and he's good enough for, instead they have enough social credit because they both look good enough for her to give birth to two African children and one Caucasian children, send the Caucasian child away with his father. Well, then she, after her children in Africa are adults, she leaves Africa and she goes back to the Caucasian society, or else she's stranded and she's like an irrelevant person, like an irrelevant, forgotten grandma whose children are all blending back into the African majority. And it would be the same as for a Chinese woman in a Caucasian society who becomes stranded and then abandoned and stranded by her after her husband's taking another wife. That's the concern that I had about those women. And I looked like, I guess I looked like a hypocrite who was being overbearing to judge men who, I thought I was completely rejected from by all women, and no woman ever wanted to breed with me. I was 50 years old and rejected, and I was pissed off about that. So then I looked like I was too judgmental and maybe hypocritical, and I'm still trying to figure out what's actually happening, what's actually happened. And I think that certain men of wealth and power have been manipulating women who they're trying to manipulate them and rig their selection of mates so that I won't have any popular descendants who are good looking and popular, and they want them all to be mediocre. And they want to choose their mates and say you have to have a mediocre husband who has enough money to support you. And because Paul is the poverty guy, and he's the son of a communist, and everything about him is poverty, and so you can't be a moocher on the welfare, and he's got bad social credit, and you have to choose a mediocre looking husband who doesn't he's not big and doesn't look good, and that's what you have. That's the husband you have to pay your bills, and they're putting that pressure on. This is what I'm thinking. They're putting that pressure on daughters of my, I'm the biological father of daughters here and there, and maybe they're trying to pressure sons into either being grandiose and mentally unstable and too ambitious, or else pressure them into being transgender, either too optimistic or too pessimistic, and or too high expectations. And they're doing some kind of psychological jujitsu apparently on these children of children of my of whom I'm the biological father. They're targeting them because they want to use them to say, look, You see, but this is what this is Paul's legacy. Children who are, not major contributors to society, or they're too numerically, they're breeding too quickly or something like this, or being dependent on welfare or something like this. Um, so anyway, I will try my best to try to make the best of be an influencer who can help them find the way and be the best that they can be, and find the best spouse they can find, uh, without giving away personnel. Is my idea. I'm not trying to give away personnel. Is the idea that I'm trying to say everybody kind of keep to their own uh, race, as a general principle. Um, because of the exploitation, the Jewish men and African American men exploiting these narratives, and also those who claim to be Native American, those men also exploiting narratives. This or that historical narrative justifies us to apply a lot of pressure and um, use a lot of extreme activism campaigns to coerce compliance with what we demand. And there's only so much the white ethnic group can endure of all these years of pressure from the Roman Empire and other Caucasians who are not white, and other mixed race people in the Americas, and immigrants. The white ethnic group is losing on all fronts for over 100 years continuously, and there's only so much the white ethnic group can endure of that. And I'm concerned that there's too much pressure from these narratives. I can't make the video too long. So anyway, I don't want to be like one of those who is legitimizing the siege narratives that are like actually resulting in an actual genocide of the white ethnic, uh, what we call ethnic, the Northern European ethnic Caucasians. That's 99% of my genetic heritage, by the way. Anyway, I got to disconnect from this video.